Spencer Scott Holmes here, and welcome to the show. I'm bringing it back in action. There's been a little bit of a, delay from episode to episode, but hopefully got all kinds of new interviews and fun times to be coming up. Been meeting people at Comic-Cons, other creators and whatnot, so get them on here, do more interviews, get that inspiration flowing, whether they be comic book writers, artists, even other multimedias, film stuff, video games. It doesn't matter. It all comes full circle together. I feel like get all that fun going, all those good times coming together, full swing. I think it's going to be some cool stuff. Pizza Boyz update. I'm getting very close to Pizza Boyz 14 coming out. Ninjutsu Sunrise series part 2. I've got maybe all of 5 more pages left to ink, plus the cover. That one also might be the 5th page. I can't remember exactly. Then the edits, checks, go over it a half dozen plus, more than that. Go over it about, 16 dozen times and make sure everything's good. And, you'll still find something at the end of the day 2 years later, but getting that going there. So Pizza Boyz coming out very soon. And then today on the show, we got Blaze Hoamakoa. Great guy. Met him over at the Impound Comics Comic-Con, and we were just having such a good conversation as is. He was in the film, high-spirited, all kinds of good stuff there. I was just like, well, we should just do a podcast together. That's the way to go. So got him on the show. He's got his comic book, One Son. Got it right here. One Son. Now, this is just technically the beginning. He doesn't even have the first issue done yet, but he's got the kind of the art lined out, the story in there. It's kind of an intro advertisement, getting people excited about it. It's a Hawaiian superhero themed adventure. Looks like really cool stuff, good artwork, fun times, something slightly different to have too, So I think it's going to be a pretty cool adventure once it's all said and done, but he's getting it going there. It's coming together, So we're going to pass the good word on of indie comics and enjoy that fun time. So let's jump on into the show. What do you say? Hello, I'm Spencer Scott Holmes, and welcome to the show. And today I got super special guest, Blaze Hoamakoa. How are you doing, dude?
I'm doing awesome, and I'm doing even better now because you actually nailed the name. A lot of people stumble on that, or they give me the look, and I have to fill in for them. But nah, you did amazing, man.
Okay, that's good because I kind of practiced it beforehand because I'm like I gotta make sure I get that last name right because I'm notorious for sometimes when reading other scripts and so on, be like, I wonder how you pronounce that name. Who knows? Sometimes it comes across like that.
I totally get it.
You know what I mean? Especially there's a lot of times there's some things too if you never hear it, you only read it, a lot of times that can always be a little bit of a complicated one too, but
I've even seen some names where as soon as you start to read it, it makes more sense than when you're looking at it, but once you're sounding it out, you're like, oh, it's Melissa. I didn't know that you could spell it that way, but okay. Well, I find a lot of people hesitate on the it's in English, I think it's apostrophe. In Hawaiian, we call it an okina, but a lot of people hate on it. I just tell them full glottal stop. Just pretend like it's 2 different syllables. But yeah, you nailed it. And we can be done with the bit.
But awesome. Yeah, we met over at the Impound Comics Comic First Comic-Con a couple weeks ago in Sacramento, California. And just got to talking about all kinds of making comics and so on. I was like, well, Blaze is such a fun guy. I want to get him on the show so we can talk even more about comic books, making projects. And of course, he's also into making movies as well, which is always one of my all-time favorite classic things.
Right. So I'm sure, have you talked about the filmmaking side of your career a lot on this show or not much? More comic books?
Not in recent times. On the older podcast, because it goes back 10 years, that we probably talked more about movie making as time kind of went on, throughout there and so on like that. And it's, well, I don't know. I just take that back. For the last episode I did, Griffin Sims, he was in the independent filmmaking too. So we just talked a bunch on there. So I'm like, wait a second. No. I guess it wasn't that long ago.
Wait. His name's Griffin Sims?
Yes.
Okay, have you ever watched a show called Red versus Blue?
Which one?
Red versus Blue.
Oh, yeah. Red versus Blue, of course.
I thought you were making a reference to Griff and Simmons, like there's that like start out the show, but that's awesome. That's a dope name. Sorry to get caught up on that. So a little bit about me. I think I have like undiagnosed ADHD. So if I get off on a tangent, I apologize first and foremost. But your filmmaking career, because I do find that interesting and something that we have in common. So I'm gonna lead with a question. Would you mind telling me about like the movie that inspired you to make movies?
If I had to sum that up, it's probably the biggest one. There's a couple of them, but like the big one for me was Clerks, of course, which I know that's the one that that's the ship that sailed a bunch of more ships after that. The project like there, but
Right, right.
that one was that kind of movie where you watch it and you look at that and go, wow, that's simple enough. Like all you gotta do is get together a handful of friends and you get a location and you can make a
Right.
movie, and it's sort of possible and so on like that. And two others to toss in that same mix is Evil Dead, the original one, and El Mariachi.
You know what? I just rewatched the original Evil Dead recently, like going into Evil Dead Rise. Oh my God.
Hmm.
Like, I don't think we've even topped that in the however many years that it's been since that was out. But yeah, those are awesome. I haven't seen Mariachi.
Yeah, El Mariachi. It's Robert Rodriguez's first movie. So if you've
Gotcha.
ever
You know
seen
what? I might have seen like the
Desperado,
trailer for that.
yeah,
Okay,
Desperado with
no,
Antonio
haven't.
Banderas is sort of like it's the second one in a sense in that one. But if you check out El Mariachi, it's like he makes it on 16 millimeter. He just goes to like a Mexican town that like his buddy was like friends with and so on. And on summer vacation or whatever, they shoot this movie together that's supposed to be just like a training exercise. But by the everything kind of works out real well that he takes it and turns it into a full on feature film.
Nice, dude. That is the dream, honestly. Because, I mean, well, I'm sure you know this, like the whole thing with Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2. Could you imagine being told that you just have to remake the same movie pretty much? And like, but then you're gonna like, I'm gonna call it a sequel. Yeah, those weird little production missteps and stuff, man. I think for me, the movie, like, I always it, but I always change my mind on what movie inspired me the most. I'm just gonna say it's Jurassic Park because I still rewatch it a lot to this day, and I think it holds up, and it's just perfect. I can't change a thing about it. Like every time I go back to rewatch it, yeah, that's
Oh, dude,
that's it for
I
me.
100% agree with you. Jurassic Park's one of my all-time favorite films. I don't know if you look behind me, you can see the VHS is sitting back there next to Last
Oh
Action
yes,
Hero because I really like 1993 a lot.
love
But
that.
Jurassic Park, I've seen that movie in theaters, I think 8 times by now. Like I saw it when it came out, and then every single time it comes around, I make sure I go and see it like multiple times. So I've seen the
Man, I
film
wasn't
a
even
lot.
born when it originally came out. But I did go watch the 3D remaster that they did, which was actually like oh my God, the part where they're trying to turn the power back on and the Velociraptor like comes through the wall. Yeah, game over. Game over. It was awesome.
Yeah, no. When that version came out, like I saw it 3 times in theaters. I think I saw the 3D one once, and then they played a 2D version at the same time too. So I went and saw that twice.
Nice, nice. That's how you do it. I actually did. Did you do Barbenheimer this last weekend?
I did. Went and saw Oppenheimer on went and saw it on Friday. I mostly always see a movie on Thursday, but it had silly times on Thursday, so I went and saw it on Friday,
Right.
and it was enjoyable. It's good. It's one of those ones.
I really liked it.
Somebody was saying that there was supposed to be a bunch of weird stuff happening in it, so I was waiting for the weird stuff the whole time. I'm like, no, it's pretty normal. Like,
Right.
me and my buddy just got done watching this on via VHS, one of the other podcasts we do. We watched this movie called Threads from 1984, and it's from England. And the whole thing about it is like, let's try to take like what would happen if a nuclear bomb was dropped and make it as serious and real as possible, and like literally get doctors, scientists, all this stuff to kind of get the facts straight. And that movie was just intense, hardcore. Nothing good
Yeah.
happens. Like it's that kind where you're going, is it better to die from the bomb or is it better to live through it? And I keep going like, I think the
Right.
bomb, dying from the bomb instantaneously is what you want. You don't want to be the ones living
Yeah.
through it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I like the film treated it as a lead up to just the Trinity test itself. And then being that history, like that is what undoes Oppenheimer. If we're looking at if we're looking at him as a character in that way, if you know what I mean. But did you watch Barbie after that, or was it just the Oppenheimer weekend for you?
Just Oppenheimer. You know what? I'm gonna say this: the Barbie one just I don't know. It looked. I hate to start saying it looks kind of dumb. That was the same. That was the way I felt like whenever I saw the trailers. I was like, and I'm not a big Margot Robbie fan to top it off. So it's like, I'm not saying that she doesn't have some decent movies here and there, but she
I
doesn't sell
can't
it enough for
deny,
me.
sure, I can't deny that it's not dumb, but I can't deny that it doesn't have clever moments. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yes, Oppenheimer. Oh my gosh. hours of heart attack. 10 out of 10. Loved it.
Nice. Yeah, no, I still dug it. I still had a good time with it and so on like that. And there's some interesting things going on. But as I said, in the back of my mind, the whole time, I'm like, there's going to be something really happens at this point. Like, that's what I kept hearing. I'm like, no, not really. It's like a
Right.
business movie. You know what I mean? It's
I
like,
didn't so I didn't notice that Christopher Nolan actively avoids romance in his movies until I don't know, Tenet. Like it just kind of if you look at the films that he makes. But this was like I felt like I don't know. You had that cooking this whole time, Chris, and you couldn't have dropped this earlier.
yeah, well, it's one of those ones. Anything that Christopher Nolan does is it's always well worth going out of the way to see. You know, I've never been like I feel like
Right,
really disappointed in any of his films. They're always good on some level. You know, some better than others, of course,
right.
but still solid all around.
Especially like you can tell that he appreciates craft as is, always opting to shoot home or going through whatever lengths to make things practical. So I'm always going to appreciate that as far as his movies and is the word discography goes, like his career, his filmography.
Hmm. I mean, it could be
For sure.
discography.
Yeah.
There's still Blu-rays and DVDs and 4Ks. You know, he's
Right.
in the era where it's
Yeah.
like
But
pretty
how,
much right past VHS.
like, do you do gaming on console or are you more of a PC kind of person?
I game on everything, so I literally have
For sure.
PC, all the consoles, you know, handhelds and random other devices too. I even like gaming on the phone like that with the Xbox Live, like streaming on there with the like that thing is like one of those ones like
Mm,
you can take that anywhere and you literally have a portable Xbox. It's like yeah, you pull out a Bluetooth controller, you're sitting in your car, you have some time to kill. You can bust out some games and it works solid. I've been using
so
it for like 3 years.
how do
That
you
streaming thing.
feel how do you feel about this like shift that we're starting to make towards the digital content and more on downloads than physical media? Because I'm finding it right now, like my internet is trash, so it causes all kinds of complications when I'm just trying to play a simple game. But yeah,
Yeah, the full digital thing, you know, because my whole life I was a hardcore collector. I mean, I'm still that person who buys DVDs and Blu-rays to this day. Like I don't stop or anything like that. Game wise, I've
hmm
almost kind of like, other than Switch, I've kind of a go, everything else I generally just get digital for the most part, unless I get a deal on it or something like that. Because it's, the game boxes aren't the same way that they used to be. You know, you don't get the cool booklet and you don't get all the little extra bells and whistles. And let's be honest, the game's not on the disc anymore. You put it into your PlayStation or Xbox and then it's got to download an extra like 40 gigs. You're like, well, clearly wasn't there in the first
right.
place. Like, what's the point if you can't play it right off the disc? You know what I mean?
Right. I mean, I got Cyberpunk 2077, and that took me like 3 days to be able to play just from the downloading and the updates and stuff. And then when I finally was able to play it, I got stuck on this extremely hard level, and I kept spawning back like in the middle of fire, and it was just yeah, I gave up on that game after a while. But I don't know if you tried that. I'm sure
I
you
gave
heard
it the
about it
college
though.
try. I definitely gave it the college try when it came out, and I put in like 6 hours or something like that. I didn't get super
Mhm.
into it, but I was like, oh, okay, it's interesting and so on, like. But yeah, I didn't go the distance on that one.
Are you a fan of like the original like Blade Runner, cyberpunky aesthetic, or is that not really your thing?
No, I love Blade Runner. You know, I love Cyberpunk so much that Super Mario Brothers 1993 is one of my top 10 favorite movies of all time.
There you go, man. There you go.
I've
That's
literally
the
done more
that's the one that I'm
podcasts.
thinking of, right?
I've done more podcasts on Mario Brothers 1993 than any other podcast out there, and I'm like, I want to keep that record going. Like,
You're gonna have to start collecting like memorabilia, original costumes, like props and stuff like that. And then one day when everybody's like, "Where's all this Super Mario 1993 stuff?" You're gonna have the house museum with all the props, all the costumes, and it's gonna be worth like a gajillion dollars.
oh yeah, that'd be so much fun. One thing that was kind of cool is this was a handful of years ago. I guess it's because now it's the 30th anniversary, I think. But when it was the 25th anniversary, there was with screening in Oakland that they did the Super Mario Brothers movie, and we went there. And, there's all about maybe like 25 people that showed up and so on. It was like the little screening room connected to a bar. But man, was that so much fun getting in there, and we're all watching Mario Brothers in theaters and so on like that, and just having a good old
Right.
time. It was too cool.
Yes. No, I love that. I like the cinema experience is something that I definitely try to always keep in mind. I've tried to watch cool movies at drive-in theaters. Sometimes I hate the quality, but there's something
Mhm.
about going to like a small theater and people are not like talking throughout the movie, but you're getting like the real visceral reaction. It's like a communal space and we're all kind of, I don't know, experiencing it together. I love that, and that's why I will always prefer going to a theater over like streaming or something like that. But some movies you just don't have that option, unfortunately.
No, that's kind of the sad thing nowadays is that many movies just don't make it to the cinemas anymore. Because yeah, that's my
Right.
main thing of like when I think of where I go out to, it's like I go to the movie theaters and whatnot. And it's almost at that point where it's like the thing to do is just to really start building your own cinema in your house because I feel that's the only way you're going to totally capture that. I got a projector with like a 120-inch screen that does give you a bit of a feel of having a movie theater in the house a little bit, a little miniature
Right.
screening room. Don't have mostly the best room for it, but every once in a while, during the summertime, you could pop that thing outside and have like outdoor movie night and whatnot. And it does give you quite a cool experience and so on, on the small scale. Like you kind of take it for granted. Like, it's only 120 inches or something like that. But you throw a movie up on there, put the Blu-ray version on, so on like that, it gets pretty dialed in.
I mean, we used to have a projector in my house. I don't know how big it was, but that sounds more. I mean, I think my TV's what 50 or something inches. That's probably more than enough to have a immersive cinematic experience. As Christopher Nolan intended you to watch Oppenheimer.
Yep. No, most definitely. It's like in my bedroom for like the movies I got here. I have a set of these THX George Lucas speakers from like the 80s and whatnot. And I combine those with an 80s
Ooh,
set of Bose speakers. So it's got like, in a sense, it's got the ultimate VHS Laserdisc era sound system. They go with it. But I feel like
right.
that's perfect for movies.
Like
It's like
right, unregulated sound.
yeah, because there were those ones that
That's
like
awesome.
those are
That's
the
the
speakers that would have been like $3,000 or something back in the day, like so whoever had to pay for them back
wow.
then, and it's one of those ones like I just sort of adopted them as time has gone on, and it's like, dude, they're sweet.
Where'd
Once
you
I got
even
them
get
all,
your hands on those?
like so my buddy's stepdad passed away, and they were in his house, and when they were cleaning things up, they're like, "Hey, you want these speakers?" I'm like, yes, I do.
Oh, that's a come up. Rest in peace to
So
that guy, but that's
I
awesome.
know. Yeah, he was a real nice guy. But yeah, it's one of those ones like having those speakers does give that ultimate, classic feel. It sounds really good too when I
Right.
hook it up to like a VCR, which, sounds bizarre, but like it's almost like that's what it was really dialed in for was that kind of era. So like, yeah, the sound could come out real nice on there.
Right. I mean, I hate to keep bringing up Oppenheimer, but when we went, it was just so like fucking loud that it was shaking the seats and like when you hear the actual boom, Jesus Christ. Yeah, it was too loud.
And that's kind of good because movies kind of got quieter as time went on. I know it's like sometimes there'll be some of those movies you'll go to and
Hmm.
you almost have that feeling like, yo, where's the remote? I need to turn this up a bit. Like some of these films are getting a little quiet, but Yeah, Oppenheimer for me was also pretty
Especially, oh my
loud
gosh,
too.
during like an action scene, I hate when the music is drowned out by the sound. I don't see the point of the music if it's not going to be the focus of a like, non-dialogue heavy. Exactly what you were saying. Gotten better. Oh, what was that?
Yeah,
We good?
it's kind. Yeah, I think we're
Hello?
fine. I think there's just a little catch up
Okay.
there probably, but well, it's like that
Should be
one.
so okay. Little bit of why it does that thing where it's like two different broadcast signals, and I'm always connected to the stronger one, but I just have to make sure sometimes that it's connected to that. So sorry if it is laggy from my end.
It's like lightly choppy, but not so bad that like it's too interfering. I think we'll have a little bit of like talking over each other here and there. It's unavoidable, but beyond that, though, it's just catched up enough. So yeah, no, I understand that.
For
I
sure.
lived out in the woods, so I had like AT&T like cellular internet that I used for the longest time until I got Starlink from Tesla style internet, and that thing's been pretty solid ever since.
Ooh, that sound Tesla has it.
Yeah, it's a satellite internet that's made for like, in a sense, rural areas where you can't normally get cable or anything
Wait.
like that. And it's pretty killer.
Oh, do you live out like in the mountain area or something like that?
Yeah, literally like kind of like a couple mountain ridges away from Yosemite.
Oh, wow. Okay, for sure.
So yeah, that's
Awesome.
why I like those ones. Like
I'm
some people
assuming
always
you go to
think I'm like,
Yosemite a ton then.
oddly not as much as you'd think. It's one of those weird ones. It's like it's close, but like one of those things that like I probably haven't been in like 10 years to tell you the truth.
Wow, really? I mean, it's beautiful out there. I've actually went for the first time, I think these past 5 years, just once, but I've always heard people in the area, friends always constantly going and I've always wanted to go, but it is amazing and cold as hell.
Yeah, it just depends on what time you get there. But no, remember one time camping. There was like a kid with me and my buddy were out there, and it was one of those nights where like the day was totally fine, but nighttime it was so that cold where it's so cold you can't even fall asleep. Like we literally like woke up at 5 a.m. and was like, I guess you want to just go fishing. Like we never got any sleep, so it was terrible.
Damn. I can't even name the last time that I'm camping. Like I probably sound like I stay indoors and do nothing, but yeah, at this point I kind of do ever since COVID and stuff. Well, I mean, I'm sure like writing is it's more than writing. It's a lot of sitting around and watching stuff or sitting around and playing stuff or sitting around and reading stuff and then you finally
Mm-hmm.
like something just clicks in your head and then you're allowed to just kind of do it or I mean, you spend a lot of time drawing, so I'm sure that's more time consuming than, coming up with your outline or whatever for the week. But yeah, ever since COVID, I would say that my amount of time spent outside has just plummeted.
Yeah, for me, it was like no, I felt like nothing changed. I was like, oh, that goes to show like how, but like I was just bummed that the movie theater closed. I was like, and then I realized that was the only thing I went outside and did was the movie theater.
That's
Everything
so
else, I'm
real.
inside working and so on stuff. So I was like, oh, okay, I guess that's interesting. But yeah, no, that is like what writing's all about, though. Is like I feel like it's about absorbing a lot of like media of all sorts of different
Right.
types because the more you can kind of do, it's amazing. You might just start reading like a novel and then all of a sudden you start getting these extra ideas that you would have never thought, even though you want to kind of write a screenplay or something like that. But I think it's a mixed
Mhm.
match of that and then having adventures and then also talking with other people about stuff like that, like triple combo of all three of those together. I feel is like almost like the best way to get all the ideas kind of going.
Right. And I mean, so this is just like this might be TMI here, but my best ideas always hit in the shower.
Mm-hmm.
Don't know what it is, but I'll stumble out of the shower practically calling my best friends like, what about this? What if we do this? Or what if the character does that? Or, what if the world looks like this? And it's just, I try to hold on. I should call it like a shower diary at this point, but I have just like a notepad in my notes app, like full of shower ideas. And I specifically organize them for that so that I know and I can trace it back. Yeah, it's weird, but
Hey, anytime's a good time to have an idea. You always want to keep that notepad of any sort, digital, physical, anything nearby, because yeah, there's so many times when you just get an idea and it's like I always realize, always write them down. Always write them down. Never think that
right,
one, you're going to memorize it. And two, never think that one, like, oh, maybe it's just an okay. Just write down anyways. You know what I mean? Because so many times you'll come back and you'll find stuff and be like, dude, that's a great idea. When did that one come up? You know what I mean? Like, but it's written down. You know it came from
right.
somewhere.
Like I definitely try to live by the philosophy. So my comic universe has so many different characters and like things that I want to explore later on down the line, that it's like I just try to live by whatever is the best idea is normally what I end up remembering the most. And I take whatever I do remember, and then when I'm out and about in the world and I don't have, my notes app open or anything, just constantly running through those ideas and like trying different puzzle pieces, seeing what works, seeing if there's like a trajectory to any of those ideas. And it is whatever I remember the next time I do that, that I feel like I end up implementing back into an outline or something like that. So it's a super scatterbrain process for me. But like you said, like I'll just be out and about, whatever, say, and then it's like now I have this whole different character that was not in the universe before. Mind you, I'm talking about a comic book series that technically doesn't even exist yet, but like I have been trying to keep these ideas organized to later be able to sift through them and see if there's anything there from my initial inspirations. I wasn't able to read all the issues of Pizza Boy that from you,
Mm-hmm.
Pizza Boys, sorry, but I read the first issue, loved it, found it to be exactly as you pitched it to me, which is like, a comic book sitcom. But yeah, like I don't think I've ever read anything that wasn't necessarily episodic. Like I got into comic books through Marvel and DC, of course.
Mm-hmm.
So I've just felt like I've been playing catch up, but I like the format that you chose. Like you said, like open for new readership at all times, which is awesome. And I want to pick up the new arc that you're doing that's supposed to be a more continuous type of thing.
Yeah, the new one I got's the Ninjutsu Sunrise, doing it like 80s, 90s, American style kung fu movies. I always feel like things like American Ninja, Surf Ninjas, Ninja Turtles, Karate
Hmm.
Kid, that kind of era of stuff. But but yeah, see, I'm glad you jumped into Pizza Boys, dug the format, because now I'm almost like I almost look at my first issue now. I call that like my punk rock issue, like where like you're figuring everything out. That one's like the one where it's all
Right, right.
it's like watching the first South Park episode, and you kind of look at like how like it's put together and how rough it sort of looks, but that's almost like adds charm to it by this point.
Right. Because I think when you go back and you want to, every time you rewrite an issue of Pizza Boys, I'm sure you refer back to that first issue because it's like, this is where your story, even though you can read it out of order, this is where your story started. So there's like a certain tone that you are always going to want to bring back and stuff. And I mean, since our series One Son has, it's so many big ideas and concepts, trying to dwindle that down to like what should be our first issue has just been like a nightmare personally. I've probably done like I think I told you this before. Before I wanted it to be the most expensive superhero TV show ever, but we both know that's not going to happen without it
Yeah.
actually, coming into existence in one way or another. And breaking it down into that comic book format is just like, man, how do I even take a reader from beginning to middle to end? Mind you, I'm a film student, so I'm thinking this is going to be a breeze. I'm just writing fucking images that, and then I'm going to fill in the dialogue later. But no, in this whole process, I've just gained such a tremendous amount more of respect for comic book creators because I have always been a fan, but now seeing the back end and what goes into it, it's just like, what is your process? Like, how did you organize your thoughts and ideas? And like, hell, going back and reading like a Marvel crossover event, where do you even begin to map something like that out? And yeah, it's insane. These, yeah, comic book creators that I've been meeting in these past few months are some of the most clever and like sleeper creative people ever.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those ones. Comics is such a special medium that like it's kind of almost becoming like a hidden gem section of media in a sense. Like everybody knows of comics, but it's not
Mm,
always like everybody knows like every deep into comics, and something like that. But it is that one style that like you can literally pretty much tell every single story you ever could want. And realistically, the only thing that mostly always takes is time. Time is the biggest thing. It's like where a movie, there's always
right.
continuous spending that no matter what, there's always going to be continual spending, new software, new equipment, new, production
Mm.
stuff, things that can only be used once before they explode. And then you got to get another one, stuff like that where
Yeah,
the only thing that comics really, it has one thing that it just doesn't kind of have over the other things, and it does miss out on the audio. Audio is like its only kind of lack. You don't, technically don't have
right.
the soundtrack, which you could still sort of get that to play in people's heads if you kind of write it in a certain way. And sometimes when it comes to certain things, you don't have the proper voices, which I think that more comes when you have something that has like a lot more cartoony voices. Like I'll use something like this. It's
Hmm.
like, when you see like Simpsons comics and so on like that, if for some reason the Simpsons comic was the only time you ever saw the Simpsons, you had no idea what those characters sounded like, I feel like that might lose a little bit of like the charm of the characters' voices and so on if you can't play them yourself in your head.
Right. Definitely, definitely. And something that I've been trying to be okay with is, I mean, I'm sure all of us hope at some point in the day to be able to at least lead the adaptation of our own IP into like a visual format, whether it's cartoon, movie, TV show, whatever it's going to be, video game. I know that a lot of us would probably prefer to be at the like at least on board of the captainship when they are doing that. But I feel like in going through and trying to again, like, what is my first issue going to be? Letting to learn go or learning to let go, sorry, of that fear of what it could be adapted into later on down the line. Does that make sense? Like learning to be okay that maybe at some point in the future this will be out of my hands and somebody else will have the responsibility of translating it to a visual media. Now I just look at it like it seems like people who are interested in IP and are interested in translating it from comic book to film format, they want to please the fans. So right now I'm just making it my job to just like build that community, build what it is like, what you should come to expect with every issue of One Son. And yeah, I'm just taking notes from all these creators that I've been meeting and whatnot. But yeah, it's been I don't even know where to start when people ask me how the process has been. It's been so many different things all at once, is all I can say.
Well, I did flip through your One Son kind of like pre-stage art book slash concept designs and all that good stuff there. So at least that's
Awesome, awesome.
that's one step of the way towards the journey. And many of things of any creative projects, if you can always just get a little bit done every single day, it all adds up eventually. It all gets there.
Right, right. And I think what was shocking to me is coming from the film background, I thought that was maybe the hardest thing to stick through, but I feel like with a film, you have a crew, at least you have cast, like people to really rely on, but then when it's pulling these ideas just from your head, I mean, and you draw your book, so
Hmm.
it's literally a matter of will some days. Like will I finish this page, or will I go to the movies and get a bite to eat? Like it's really up to you. And with the comic book, I feel like it's that way as well, and you have a lot more control about the story that you're telling. But it is just complete willpower. With a film, I feel like everybody's excited at first. With the comic book, at least for me, it's just how much money give artists at this point in time and what can they do for that. And yeah, so we're about, I think we just got 3 or 4 people. We're definitely over the halfway mark as far as artwork goes. um And then it clicked in my head just last week. I need a letterer. Like that I'm gonna have to find a letterer sometime
Yeah, there's all those little extra
a
jobs. I
week.
mean, I think that's why I ended up just doing it all myself because just from doing filmmaking and so on like that, that was the biggest like struggle that I sort of had is that I used to always have a joke where I'd be like, everybody loves the idea of making a movie until they actually get on
Mhm.
set and see how much actual work there is involved. Even people that say that they're in the movies don't. I don't think they just don't comprehend the time it takes to create stuff. And I
Right.
think that's the biggest crutch that like kind of gets people, and they'll fall out and so on like that. So I felt, hey, if I make a singular comic 100% by myself, I know I can't fail myself. That was my main thing. Other
Right.
people might not, you
Right.
might not be able to always count on, but you can always count on yourself.
Well, I mean, originally I was going to be drawing the book, but I just, I see all these awesome superhero comics coming out from indie creators. I mean, Impound is one of them, and it's
Mhm.
just like I need our superheroes to be on the shelf next to them, and I'm not freaking the hell out that like and getting that like that literal artist's imposter syndrome that I just kind of phoned it in. Because I'm no artist by training or anything like that. So pretty much every panel I was doing was a literal reference photo of me in like a mock-up costume trying to get like the poses as best I can. Even for the women, this is what I was doing. And I can't draw women's faces for shit. So it was going to be an ugly book. And yeah, I'm really glad that we ended up pivoting in another direction. But that has just extended that hill and made me think about things in a bunch of different ways. I mean, I'm not sure if you saw on Instagram, but I just this last weekend we drove down to San Diego for Comic Con to
Hmm.
meet the person that helped us get in touch with our new artist. His name's Mark Teodosio, who has the Realist Bionic comic book, and that was just a kind of same thing with Comic Verse Con, like a reaffirming that I'm definitely in the right space and I'm definitely meeting my kind of people. And we basically met the person who got us in touch with our new artist. And it was just very reaffirming right space and that I'm, surrounded by like-minded creatives. Felt very much like Comic Verse Con, where, you know, you may be strangers with a person, but then the more you start to talk to them like us, you start to realize you may have a lot more in common. And it's like that's what this whole genre and is for, is bringing people together realistically through the art of storytelling, much like film.
Hmm. No, definitely. Most, for sure. When you were down there, did you meet at Comic Verse? Did you meet Brandon from Malevolent Rising?
I don't think I did. Is he the one that had that book called Sin? Was that what it was called?
No, his is Malevolent Rising is what it's called. Um,
Oh, okay, okay.
he got a booth over at San Diego Comic Con, so that's one of those ones I'm like, oh, I want to talk to him again and see how that whole experience went because that seems. I've almost kind of come to the conclusion that sometimes for Comic Cons, it's almost like Now, there's nothing wrong if you can hit up as many as possible. That's good too. But there's something to be said about just hitting the really really big ones because sometimes there's
Right,
certain places when you're in sometimes some real small towns and so on like that. And I kind of hate to sort of say it, but there's just not enough readers coming through because that's what I summed it up. Is a lot of times you can have a bunch of people come through the door and they bought tickets. That's great for the person putting on the event. Doesn't really help out the vendors inside when it's like you realize that these people don't really read because if someone doesn't read, it's I call it the
right,
equivalent of like it's like trying to sell a car to someone who doesn't drive. What are they going to do with it? You know what I mean? And if they don't read, what are they going to do? They might like the way it
right,
looks, they might like the art, but it's not the same thing. So sometimes I feel like you want to be in a place where you know that there's serious people coming in, not people that go, "Hey, I got $5 and I'm bored on the
right.
weekend." You know, enough to get in through the
No, and
door, and,
yeah,
and that's
especially
the
if you
only
want
money they're
them
going to spend.
right, if you want them to be willing to just sit down and invest in your book, I mean, we've done a couple events where they were not comic book based at all to make a couple sales, especially because our sales right now have been just pushing that you get your name on the Mahalo page with a certain purchase amount and so on and so forth. But even at that, you have to talk these people and like pitch them. It's not an elevator pitch either. You can open with
Mhm.
that, and we got really good at our elevator pitch, but you have to almost fully describe this world to them when you don't have the comic book in hand. So, I mean, for me, I'm just excited to finally have the book in hand, but I haven't even thought about as far as you're saying now, which is some events people are there for like anime or they're there for the video game stuff. And yeah, good luck getting them to actually want to invest in your product, right?
Yep. I've noticed that many a times that like some people be like, oh no, I only read manga or I only like anime or like they're like singular
Mm,
fan based people, and it's one of those ones because to me I'm that kind of person that my whole life growing up. I liked it all. I felt like I love movies. I love
mm,
animation. I love both anime and cartoons, American style. Same with comic books and mangas. Like video. I think I said video games. Or whatever, all that stuff kind of comes together in my book. Wrestling, all the things that you see,
right.
sci-fi, toys, action figures. Like I like it all, but I kind of realize that a lot of people only like one or two things, and that's it. And
Mm.
those people, it's not saying you can't sell it to them. You mean I've definitely got people that told me that they've never read comic books, and I've still sold them a comic book at the end of the day. But you
Right.
definitely are paddling up a creek with that one. You are doing the uphill battle of trying to forcefully get something. So I always feel like it'd be nice to be in a situation where, because when I used to go to Comic Cons before I sold at Comic Cons, my main thing was like, where's the books that I just can't go get anywhere else? That was what I always wanted to find. I want to find cool indie
Right.
comic books that I know I can't go to the store to find. I'm not going to probably find them easily online. Where can I find that stuff at?
I mean, thank you to the internet for connecting us with those smaller creatives and stuff. Have you heard of like Godhood Comics?
No, I don't think I have actually.
Sure. I think they're based out of Atlanta. I could be wrong, or maybe one of their comics is Atlanta. But yeah, they are kind of the the main company that I see as like the blueprint for what we were kind of going for, which is really just like superhero imprint comic books. I don't know if their books are completely connecting like that, but just the way that they've done it, you can tell that they spend the time on the art, they spend the money on the lettering, like all that kind of stuff. So using them as like a I guess like what's the word, like a standard. Yeah, so
Mm-hmm.
so we want our book to be able to exist on the same shelf as them. So what do we need to do? And then like deconstructing their process in terms of how they make a comic, not, I'll never say rival them, but to be able to understand why they make their book that way, or maybe why they spend X amount of dollars on a page, whereas this other company spends X amount of dollars on a page, which I can't believe that it's literally like a film where it's by page, it's by minute, and you're just thinking about getting one page done for a set of hours per day. But yeah, once I figured that kind of formula out too, like as far as budgeting and stuff with the comic book goes, that was where I really felt like we started making like progress. Like I'm
Mm-hmm.
not swimming in debt, wondering where it's finally gonna hit, and like I'm gonna start to see progress. But yeah, once we were able to find that new artist and stuff like that, and just apply everything we had learned up to that point and on forward, I feel so much better about it. But I don't know if I told you about this, but there was a point in there where I really didn't know if we were going to finish this book because we had a falling out with the artist, and yeah, it was just I think I was at the time getting pretty insecure about just feeling like if the art's not good, then I don't know if somebody's actually going to pick it up. I don't know if somebody's going to want to spend $10 on an issue and then spend another $10 to figure out where it goes from there. And then I had like three artists working on the first issue. Like, do I really want three different art styles, I guess, defining the literal first appearance of our world? So Yeah, it's just been a whole process of one problem pops up, another problem pops up. What is the best creative decision? Luckily, it's not like a film where every day we're spending money on crew and cast and literally keeping the lights on for a production. But there was a moment where I was like, I don't, I don't know if spending money to do this is even. And then I'm glad that yeah, came out of that because I'm very happy with how the book looks right now.
Yeah, well, it's definitely one of those ones, sometimes you're just not too sure until like, it actually happens. And sometimes the best thing to do is just to go with it. Like, what's the worst that's going to happen? Even at the end of the day, like, hey, spend a little bit of extra money than you want to, but at least you could say, hey, I did it. I got this going, got this
Right.
project, and I think that's kind of the most important thing. But then also being able to find that sort of streamlining of it, balancing of all like the pricing and so on like that, even with
Right.
myself, I'm like, I get that point sometimes because since I do everything myself, that also sort of takes a toll because like there's just almost not enough time in the day to get all the things you need to get done. And then sometimes some of my
Right.
issues have been taking a lot longer to come out than I would like. It'd be nice to have them out like at least at the 3 months is I like when I can do it like that, but sometimes it just doesn't happen that way, and I always kind of wonder what is the next best step for me if I wanted to add more to like a team to actually have somebody else. And I'm at that point where I'm like, I don't want somebody else just to draw it because I like the style that I've got going. Like I've come to that point where at first I was
Mhm.
just drawing just to draw it because I was like, well, I'll just do this and whatnot. But as time has went on, I'm like, I personally actually like my style quite a bit as it's kind of gone on. So that's kind of been like, I don't want to lose that, but what are ways that I can, speed up some of the process, and get things going and still continue it
It's
to
almost
have
like
the
you need
same
a
look and feel.
protege.
Well, that's, I feel like a lot of times I think because in manga books, what they have is, and this is like the unspoken thing, but like, because you only see the one dude or gal on the cover who wrote and drew it, or but there's mostly always like 3 to 4 other people, or maybe 2 to 4 other people that work on it in Japan that are uncredited, people that. So it's like there really is actually a full team working on those mangas because they got to pump out 19 pages every single week for some of those ones, like a maniac
That's
schedule.
crazy.
It's just ridiculous. But I almost think that's kind of like, there's some of those extra jobs in there that like, that just would speed up the process, but you're still doing the core drawings, but then you still have somebody else that can come in there and, fill in extra little details here and there, tone these areas a little bit more, all that stuff that takes up extra time that you could almost just be working on the next panel. I think something like that would almost be the way to
Right.
go. The other way I toss up is if I had someone who did the inking. Like I still did all the drawings, but then I had somebody come over and ink because the inking almost takes me way longer than drawing by far. I've kind of summed up that
Do
it probably
you
take.
um
Go ahead.
do you draw physically first and then like scan it in?
No, I draw everything digital. Like, and I learned to draw in a
Okay.
bizarre way. I learned to draw on those tablets that like you draw on the tablet while you look at the screen. That's literally how I learned to draw.
Gotcha, gotcha. I think those were like really common in like or like at least industry standard for a lot of things. So I mean, they've been around, but I've never had one personally.
Yeah, they've literally been around since the 70s. You could get one for like an Apple II. like
Oh,
like like
gotcha.
like they've been there forever, but as I said, like I just kind of like learned to sort of draw on one of those and I got so used to it. Now I draw on screens. I got that for both my computer and then I'm like when I'm on the go, I because I've mostly been out like and about more often is I've been doing all my inking on an iPad Pro because I can just literally draw like
For
in the
sure.
car and so on like that, you know.
Actually, getting an iPad probably the greatest thing I ever did because that I mean, if I didn't get an iPad, then I wouldn't have attempted to make a comic, and then I wouldn't have made a comic. So thankfully, I got the iPad. But I normally would have traditionally drawn and sketched and stuff physically. Never considered myself much of an artist, but like now I'm actually able to. For instance, a lot of my characters have like tattoos, so I'm able to
Mhm.
actually make up little. pieces and like chunks to send off to the artist. That way, more accurately translate them onto their own drawings. But if not for things like that, then I feel like I'd be kind of shit out of luck and just struggling to convey some of the more like nuanced details visually. But now I can just like mock up a sketch cover or like literally. I hate doing this to them, but stick figures does get the point across a lot of the time. If I can, I try to actually, give the characters some anatomy and like label out who's doing what. But yeah, normally
Yeah.
it's just stick figures.
Yeah, definitely. Just kind
So
of
have you
getting
ever
that.
sorry, have you ever actually like have you ever drawn someone else's book or just your own creations?
I've only done variant covers for other people. I've never drawn anything beyond just my own projects in a sense, And it's one of those ones
For
like
sure.
once again, I wouldn't think if I would have had if somebody said like, "Hey, I want you to draw my book," I felt like I don't really think of myself as like that kind of artist. I'm like, okay, I feel I'm writer first and I can do my own projects, but I don't know if I want to take on somebody else's
Mm,
project like that in a sense. I think that would be kind of a weird
right.
beyond I don't mind doing a pinup or a variant cover or anything kind of fun like that. But yeah, that would be like I don't think of myself as that like, that's almost like not really my I mean, don't be wrong. I enjoy drawing, but I don't. It's not like that thing that's like, man, I could just be drawing 12 hours straight a day. I don't
Right.
have like that exact thing. Like I feel like sometimes even like drawing more than like 4 or 5 hours in a day can just like that could be almost a lot in itself.
Right. And I feel like I feel like that transition of going from working on your own book and kind of, doing it how you want to do it to working on someone else's book would be like going from I'm a director and then I'm a cinematographer on someone else's thing. I don't know if like that'd be fun. I don't know if I could draw somebody else's book either. I mean, hell, just trying to draw some comic book characters seems laborious after a while. So
Yeah, because you just sometimes would get, just get some projects, and I just feel like you would draw something, and then somebody like, oh, that's actually not really what I was picturing. It's just like, well, you could have gave more details in the first place. Yeah, it's almost I don't want to deal with that. Though I will say because you brought up the cinematography thing, I used to always say because when I made movies and so on like that, I always ended up doing so many different jobs that I always like went, man,
mm,
I would love to just be the cinematographer on somebody else's movie and not have any other job but that one singular job. Like
right,
that would be so
right.
nice not to have to be like, oh, okay, gotta make sure the sound's doing good, gotta check that, gotta check the script, then I gotta go back to the camera. And it's sort of like directing and shooting at the same time. There's a reason why the director and the cameraman should be two different people. You just almost can't pay
Hmm.
enough attention to everything at once because you're either going to go one of two ways. You're either going to be
Right,
looking at the acting or you're going to be looking at how does the scene look on camera, but trying to go back and forth on that's always such
right.
a tough balance.
No, I totally agree. And it gets into that thing where I feel like I don't know, for instance, film is just like you said, too many to be paying attention to at once. And I feel like if, for instance, before I found out about the like what an assistant editor does and like how they comb through the footage, they go through the dailies and the selects, yada yada, versus what the editor does. For us, the little guys, we are both. So I always imagine that for these big Hollywood films, the actual editor is going through every single minute of playback and like trying to find and like craft those images. So thankfully with film, I mean, you get to break up the responsibilities amongst more people. But for people who are working on a shoestring budget, we just have to know how to do that kind of stuff. I mean, I don't know how you did it when you shot your own stuff, but it would be literally down to me just deleting the takes I know I'm not going to use off the SD card to then save space on the SD card and then to the edit have footage that I know I was going to use at the end of the day. That's just like a last resort. I've had to work around so many like different things in that area and stuff too.
Well, my big thing, what I would do for shoots is I would always shoot with way more cameras and way more microphones than anybody would probably normally need. But I loved always being like safe and having as many backups as possible, especially when you're doing like sort of live events and so on. Because for a while I did like wedding videos and so on like that, and those are those ones I felt like no way, it's one day I got to get this all captured right here and there.
Right,
So I'm
right,
just gonna set. I would literally set up like 6 or 7 cameras and put about 3 microphones placed all around. Plus the cameras themselves all have their microphones on too, because you just never know. Because a lot of times people too,
right,
like they'll be talking on the mic and you're thinking you're getting it recorded from there, and then they just set the mic down and then they're off talking God knows where else, and you're like, at least that one camcorder sitting over there at least had a microphone on it, and I could at least use that audio. It might not be the greatest audio, but audio is still
right.
audio.
Yeah, and I can't wait till I have the opportunity to at least cross shoot a dialogue scene, because that is just the most tedious thing on the planet, is just trying to get literally just a master and then over the shoulder coverage. For some reason, my takes never end up lining up. They like the dialogue always ends up changing in between camera shifts, and it's just madness. It's complete. Like I end up using half of the master and then half of the scene from the coverage.
Yeah. And a lot of times those shots too, I would line up, I would do them like sitcom style where I'd put 3 cameras up and then I'd capture it all at once.
Jeez, did you rent your cameras out, or you just have that many cameras?
um, well, digital cameras by a certain point, I did have that. Before, a lot of times it would just be like you would just have like I'd have a camera, somebody else would have a camera, and we'd sort of combine forces to
Mm,
like kind of have them. But I always liked having that multiple, because even if you have like, let's say like, okay, one camera's, of course your master camera that's going to be much more better than others. You can still sometimes use a cheap camera for sometimes some extra shots and so on that could
sure.
still work on in. Like it's amazing. Like one movie that like really stood out to me for cameras and being able to utilize it was it's gosh, drawing a blank right now. Jason Statham movie. It's a sequel one. What the heck is that movie called? Um,
The high voltage
yes, yeah, Crank
transporter,
2. No, Crank 2 High Voltage. That's
crank.
the one. Because that movie was one of those ones where
Yo,
like they shot that movie on like one or two $4,000 cameras, and the rest were all like $300 cameras. Like, and they just that's
those
that's
are
what they.
like the he's like the unbeatable machine in that one, right? Like he and like what he can't die or something like. I haven't seen them in a while, but I remember I mom freaking out that I was watching it.
Yeah, well, because they are extreme movies. Yeah, he's just got to like the first one. He just always has to keep his heart going. I want to say, so he's just got to do ridiculous things to stay like active and all that kind of stuff. And the second one just goes even.
That's what
The
I
second one's like one of those
remember.
ones goes even more extreme and just has some great stuff in it. But the whole thing is that like they don't shoot that movie on very like fancy equipment. It's almost like stuff that you could practically almost go pick up at like a Best Buy, and the fact that like that's what
Right.
they were using is like that's cool. Like I like that kind of like, because I'm like one of those people, like I appreciate like more kind of guerrilla punk rock tactics for putting together projects and art.
Same.
Like that to me is always really cool. It's the same thing of music. I think like music sounds sometimes better when you get more raw feels than getting like overly produced 72 track, stuff where it's just it starts going like okay, you could pump it back now. Maybe 8 tracks will do the job better in a sense. You'll get more of the feel of the tunes.
Right. Right, right. And we don't need I mean, I hear it everywhere now, but everybody just stacking their vocals and singing on that like some falsetto nonsense. But regardless, I still feel like with film like have you have you ever heard about the production of the first Paranormal Activity?
Uh-huh. Yeah. No, I saw that one in theaters.
Insane. Love that. But like the way that they make that movie literally was they just paint it and then dress it and shoot all the scenes with two new actors. Like I would much rather prefer that approach to filmmaking than the studio backed. We're gonna shoot it in and you need to use it. Otherwise, we're not going to get funding from this one company. So you have to do that. And like, mark all the boxes and stuff like that. That just seems like less fun in terms of creativity.
Yeah, well that's why I like I don't know if you ever watch any Woody Allen movies or anything like that, but like his movies are mostly very like they almost feel like the same thing too. It's like you could just totally make this yourself. They're very casual. They're just talkie pictures with light comedy thrown in between of just people like slice of life style, and it's like I like that when I see that kind of filmmaking, it's like that's the kind I like. It's like almost one of those ones where or Edward Burns, he always feels like he does kind of like secondary like Woody Allen stuff in like the 90s and 2000s, and then he also stars in big movies too. But he's got movies where it's like it practically just takes place like almost like an apartment, in a couple other locations,
Right.
and that's the whole thing. It's just a character like almost piece, and that it's simple and to the point, and like I love that. And I feel like when you make movies like that, you can be in a lot more full control. I mean, even Francis Ford Coppola said he's like, I think Woody Allen is the filmmaker that figured it out because he's in 100% control of all his movies. He never has studios telling him what he can and can't do. He's not trying to beg for extra money and so on like that, And I think there's something to be said about having kind of control. And I don't know. It's like that's almost what I kind of like about like comic books is you're in control in a sense. You don't have somebody else telling you what you can and can't do. You could do pretty much whatever you generally want.
Complete.
Yeah.
Right. And I feel like at least in terms of film, that's why I always gravitate back towards like the horror genre, or at least low budget horror.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can still have a very nuanced character study on your main character, but then also give the audience a little bit of what they want, which is blood and explosions or violence, whatever it is. The thing with that being that, it does increase the budget exponentially because you at least need props and makeup and pads if you're going to be doing crazy stuff. But I really appreciate the greats like, Raimi and stuff like that, who shepherded that kind of underground DIY horror style that, opens you up to so many different kinds of stories and whatnot. Over on the comic world, really, as soon as I learned that you could print your own comic book, I think it was only a matter of time until I made my own. Like before, right, no idea that you could even print it in that format at the size and then buy your own like specially sized backboards and bags and stuff like that. So it's just like a whole new world right now. You can really do whatever you want if you invest your time and effort and honestly money into it.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah. It's one of those things that's like, that is sort of the upside of the era that we kind of live in right now is you technically can pretty much do any of these things that you want to, and you don't need education. That the education's all there. You know what I mean? You don't have to go to any fancy schools or anything like that. You could pick any artistic, journey you want to take, and you could literally just start right this second, and you start stacking the equipment that you need, and piecing together, and that's kind of the cool thing. I mean, the only downfall is the fact that everybody else has that same, opportunity now too. So it does make the pool a little bit bigger than it once was. But, it's just kind of nice that everybody can kind of freeform their own stories and, really, tell the exact thing that they want. I mean, that's a lot of times why I like to read like mangas over like the animes is because I feel like when I read those ones, I'm kind of getting the Solo Vision / those other 3 or 4 unnamed assistants. Beyond those people, you're kind of getting like the one vision thing, which is just kind of cool, where that once it gets to an anime, even though they stick kind of similar, you start getting the committee throwing in all kinds of ideas and so on like that. And maybe that for some things that does, you can make things better, but like sometimes I like the one vision just to see this is one person's story. I want to see how they run that,
Absolutely. I was just going to say that, like, I feel like, what we do on a comic book level will then influence in 5, 10, 20 years, maybe it'll be influencing that new wave of, the generation of filmmakers that we are when they finally break into the industry and they're telling those stories. They're going to be like, well, what can we adapt that hasn't been adapted? And they're going to look at whatever, Godhood Comics, Impound Comics, and like, let's translate those properties because it is their turn. And I feel if you're just looking at the general direction that media is going right now, we've had the same, honestly, the same players in these huge positions of power. I'm looking at you, Mickey Mouse, like who have just
Mhm.
been literally now they're at a point where they're parodying their own art. Like they're taking their own art and then just redoing it again list and like they're it's just not really churning out anything new. And I hear a lot of people talking about Disney fell off so hard that now Pixar's starting to fall off. And that's sad to us because we grew up on Disney movies, we grew up on Pixar movies, and we want them to be good, but I don't feel any innovation coming from them because a lot of the movies that I do see now, I just feel like retreads of honestly Indiana Jones, Jaws, and Jurassic Park. Like in some form or another, they're just trying to elicit the feelings that those movies really did. But yeah, that's my mini rant on the industry as a whole at the moment. It's I feel like that's why
Yeah, what's that one that like, at least the cool thing is that if you got to look a little bit, but you can find all sorts of other, you know, media,
mm,
movies, comics, all that stuff out there, all these different types of tales and stories to, find and
exactly
so on, and yeah, it's like one of those there's certain like big movies that yeah they'll be great, they'll be awesome like that, and then there's other ones too where they become kind of a cash grab. And I mean I hate to sort of say, as much as I love cinema as being one of my favorite things, I feel the days of this like going to the movie theaters is getting closer and closer to the end. I mean I would be surprised if in 20 years from now that there'll be actual cinemas that you can go to beyond like a couple major cities. Like I feel like what they'll become novelties, almost equivalent to the way that like other things are, like finding a good arcade and things like that. Like they're not going to
right.
exist as frequently all over the place, because I mean even now it's like you kind of when I go to the movies, it's like rarely is a movie theater even packed, and you're like, dude, it's opening day and there's like 15 other people here. Like are they even making the money for the air conditioning that they're like turning on right now?
Right. Right. I mean, it's crazy. Like, thankfully, we have AMC A list because we are very avid moviegoers. We're there
Mhm.
every weekend. It's like we know we're gonna at least spend the money on the popcorn and stuff like that. But I feel like as soon as TVs get big enough or projectors get quiet enough, that is where we're really gonna start to see the shift from like film going versus just film viewing, if that
Yeah.
makes sense. Like it's only a matter of time till the technology that is available, like at a consumer is really available, and it's competing with whatever your little chain theater is.
Yeah. Well, and it's one of those ones too. It's just there's a lot of people I think that they're content with just watching the movie at home on their 55-inch TV and calling it a day right there,
Right,
because they're not in a sense into movies. They like movies, but they're not like into it where they really love it when they want to see them on the cinema and they like the
right,
all the behind the scenes and all the extra aspects to them. You know what I mean? They're listening, it'll come out on TV in 2 months. I'll just wait for that. And I think that's the thing too. It kind of gets to it, as it says, becoming more of a novelty thing, like so many other kind of businesses
mm.
are that are changing. But you know,
I mean,
enjoy movies
crap. We
for as
thought
long as you
that.
can.
Right, right. There was a minute ago where I totally thought that the comic book industry was collapsing because so many different local retailers were just closing down. I didn't
Hmm.
know why. I mean, obviously constantly going through shifts and changes, but again, that's why I'm excited about all these new emerging voices. Is there was that big boom with Image, but other than Boom, Image, IDW, or shit, is I
Yeah, IDW.
they have to be right. Like, no, they just don't publish Transformers anymore. But yeah, like they are the main indie creators. But then what
Well,
happens
and
if
I hate to
they
sort of
move
say it
up
like
into
is I always say
what were
those
you gonna say?
companies those companies aren't really indie, like in a sense, like especially
Sure,
like Image,
exactly,
like
exactly.
I Like I love going to a comic book store and go, hey, do you guys carry any indie? And they're like, well, there's some Image books over here. I always stop and be like, let's be honest, Image is not indie at all. Look at the creators that are on there. Like if that creator has been
Right,
working at Marvel and DC, like it's that kind of thing that I almost feel you can't be indie anymore if once you become established. Once you become established, you'll never
right,
have that title of indie. You are now, even if you pay for it your own self in a way, which technically I guess makes it indie by that standard. But the thing is, you already have name brand recognition. I think that declassifies you from indie, where indie is supposed to be nobody knows who the heck you are right now, and that's what makes it cool and
right,
interesting.
right. Because that's what I was, getting to is the fact that all those properties, by the time I feel like we're 40 or 50, are already going to be starting to be translated into other mediums and stuff. I mean, Spawn is obviously like the keystone character of that side of the fence. Um,
Mm-hmm.
what happens to Marvel and DC by that point in time, I do not know. I feel like there's always going to be room for them, but they're going to have to innovate at some point or another. And the thing is that they don't pick off of Image. They pick off of the creators like you or I for what is like the general consensus on like what's hot right now. So I've seen them implement ideas from like the smaller creators because they're smaller and like, ride those trends and whatnot. So again, I just really feel like what we do on a microscopic level ends up impacting the industry as a whole, no matter what it is, whether you're making Pizza Boyz or the new issue of Impound. Like those are things that everybody is going to be aware of and everybody within this community is talking about. So we're constantly learning about these new stories and stuff that are readily available because people like you or I are taking the time to create it.
Yeah, and I think that's one of those ones too. And people like it's almost like I think we're getting to that point where everybody's going to have their sort of niche audience of like, hey, this person's they're into this exact thing, this genre right here specifically, the way that these stories kind of
Mm-hmm.
go. And that's kind of the cool thing that we do have this. If you like one story of something, the upside is you can mostly find a couple others that are in a similar ballpark, and keep going
Mm-hmm.
down that rabbit hole. No different than like, finding different movies or different bands and all that stuff, and then just keep going, oh, there's more and more and more stuff kind of like this. But that's a cool thing. I like that. It's a lot of times that's the
Right.
neat thing is that you got this variety and these choices that you can all, go through and so on. Even just like comics, like, they got like the Comixology Unlimited, and sometimes you find some random stuff on there that you would have normally never probably picked up in the store, but then you find there, you're like, this is
Right.
pretty cool. And next thing you know, you've read like 7 graphic novels of it, and you're like, hey, you never know what you're going to find.
Right. And I mean, even though, our books are not available on Previews World or in your local comic retailer, I think that's what makes when we finally do get a person to purchase our own book, it feels like a much more like personalized, like almost tailored experience because you probably either bought it at a booth, so you met the you met the creator
Yeah.
directly, or you stumbled onto their social media, you found them interesting. Oh, I like this artwork. I'm gonna give them a follow. Whatever it is, I feel like that's just really more how people shop these days, regardless. Again, we had that little scare. I forget when it was, but when all those comic retailers were closing and everything had to be shifted around,
Mm-hmm.
um, I think it's better to be straight to consumer at this point in time. I think people are just really spending money because of, shout out to Apple Pay. Like it's just more, it's easier to buy stuff online than to actually go to a point. So for like the indie creators and stuff, we actually have that leg up in a way, although the normal process of buying a comic book is honestly a little bit different normally.
Yeah, no, well, I think it's that good one that it does work in many ways. It's also like all the handmade artwork, it doesn't mean necessarily comic books or anything, but just all that
Mm,
sort of section of creativity and so on. People like that, nowadays. Like it used to be, there was a period where like, oh man, why would I buy this cool vase that this guy, made when I could just go to Walmart and buy one for $7? Well, nowadays people they don't want the $7 Walmart one. Everybody's gonna have that. They want that $70 vase that's unique and you can't
right,
find it anywhere else, and it's handcrafted
right,
and it's all that special extra detail. I think that's the thing is people have really come to the conclusion that that's the cool thing is like the having that unique piece of artwork that somebody put time and effort into, and really put it together
right.
well.
Definitely, and that's definitely why I've found more, I feel like every creator has to cut corners every now and then, but I've definitely found more satisfaction with reading an indie book as opposed to the same story about Spider-Man, you know? He's my favorite character. I'm always going to want to read
Yeah,
Spider-Man
I love me some
comics, but
Spider-Man.
how many times can I watch him lose Mary Jane? Like, dude, I get it. I get it. It's part of the continuity, but how many times do we have to run in this circle before things can actually move forward, right? And it's more rewarding to be able to. Oh, Impound Comics was, I think, like 4 issues in by the time that I actually heard about them. It was just
Mhm.
fun to find, be excited to like hunt down those issues and like kind of just dive into a new universe that somebody just thought of. Like he didn't have to do that, but he did it, and thankfully they lived close enough to where I live that we could partake in Comic Con and actually, show up at their store and bother them for a little bit. So thankfully they were cool with that. But yeah, we did that too.
Nice. I remember when I first met Brent when he was only on like his second book, and we were at the Stockton Comic Con together and whatnot. And then like it was like him and his brother, I want to say, but I've never seen his brother ever again. I almost want to say that's who it was. And he was sitting there in the booth helping him out. And then I was like, "Well, you're gonna sign this, right?" He's like, "Well, I didn't work on it." I'm like, "Damn it, you're gonna sign it anyways. I don't care if you didn't work it. You're sitting here at the booth.
Oh yeah.
I
Oh
gotta
yeah.
forcefully
Because
make
you
you
never,
sign
I
this
mean,
book."
like obviously you're like, oh, you never know like if these people are going to be famous, but at the end of the day it's like sitting there and pitching somebody something that you don't even know if they're going to buy. It's much different than jobs like, I worked at retail stores and stuff like that, so that people normally come in gonna buy something, but telling them your ideas and giving it to them that way is so much more nerve-wracking. Like it's on the same level as when you're showing people a short film for the first time. It feels like they could just, from the look on their face, tear apart all the work that you've put in up until this moment. So it's horrifying. Like my creative partners have just taken that in stride, like didn't bat an eye when I asked them to help out at some of the events and stuff. So I'm super grateful to them, but it's getting that support from outsiders, like seeing the about your ideas and your concepts. To me, that's the only motivation that I really need, because other than like other than myself, who's gonna read this shit? Is really what I think about. Like it's not entertaining if only I'm enjoying it. So I love to see and like creators and get that feedback and stuff. But yeah, man, there's only so much you can say at the same time without giving things away. And I'm excited. I think, yeah, like 15 or 14 pages left, I think. Maybe 16. I'm not too sure.
Hey, well, it's one of those ones, as long as it keeps going forward, making progress every day,
Right.
it'll eventually get there and so on. That's how I feel like my latest Pizza Boyz one. I think I looked at it today. I'm like, oh, I only got 5 more pages left to ink. I'm getting very close to the end of this part. So, you eventually get there. It's
Nice.
amazing, how much time and effort kind of goes into it. But yeah, still trucking
Right.
along and
So
so on. But Mhm.
how do you how that like is were you saying earlier that you're trying to get an issue out every, is it 3 months?
That's what I would like. I used to be able to kind of get them like that, where because if I got them out every 3 months, I would have a graphic novel at the end of the year by that standard, And I feel like that's not
Mm,
too shabby for like a one person operation right there. Sometimes it's just like, yeah, you just with other projects and other things kind of going on, you only have so much time in the day for so many things, and sometimes I just you haven't been able to get as much kind of going. So, and then plus the other downfall too that I always have is that a lot of times I'll work real hard on doing the drawings and everything like that, but then you just literally go radio silent as far as advertising goes. And that's like almost another one too, where it's like, advertising is such a job in itself that like you literally could easily hire somebody to do that. And that would almost probably be more important than having somebody else come by and doing anything artistic. You know what I mean? Because that
yep.
could take up so much more of the day than anything, you can do. And it's that weird one too, that like, it's like you almost kind of weigh, it's like, okay, I got a couple hours right now. Well, what am I going to do? You feel like the most productive thing I guess I should be doing is drawing to get this thing farther ahead, but then you also do need to get a little bit of that advertising going there. Or, sometimes that happens. It's like, you'll make some extra videos and things like that. And you're like, this is cool. And then you kind of realize you're like, that just ate up like 2 days I could have been drawing. That's all I think about sometimes is like,
right.
It's like that one where it's like, yeah, that's cool. But I'm now, yeah, like, it's that weird thing there. And that's the thing that I feel like I would like to sort of have at some point, is to sort of have a team kind of environment, like once again, to work on projects like with other people. Cause it's been like kind of a while since I've really done that. Like it seems like almost like 7 or 8 years since the last time I worked on like animation or videos or anything, like, really having a team. And I feel with Pizza Boyz, that would be kind of, or just comics in general, there would be something to be said about even just having one, if not two other people help carry a little bit of the loads and like the different, like, all the excess jobs and stuff like that, because it does like
literally,
it does take
all the back end work. Yeah, I mean, shit. Like I'm sure like it's running a website. You have to run, be able to ship out orders. You have to figure out all that stuff. Oh, how much does your comic book weigh? Fuck, we need to make QR codes. Like, all those back end, like things that you don't even think about when I open up the Pizza Boy thing. Not the first thing I'm thinking about. I'm just reading a comic book, right? But all those things that go into that, into getting that book into somebody's hands, it's like all has to be thought of beforehand. And yeah, so when I talk about the comic book creating process, to me that's like the stressful part where I'm like, it's not even just making a comic book. It's like it's making a website and an Instagram and a TikTok account and learning how to run all these things, and then learning how to strategically roll out your content and promote your content. Started getting into like running Instagram ads, which it helps with exposure and stuff, but at this point I don't even know if does that translate to a sale. I'm not sure. So
yeah,
we're all just figuring this stuff out.
Yeah, there's so many of those things I experiment with too, and then you kind of feel like sometimes if someone sees an ad, do they treat your stuff differently now? That they go, oh, that's an advertisement. Screw this guy.
Yeah.
There's so many of those things that you always kind of wonder.
What do you want from me?
Yeah, it's just trying to get it out there, man. Like, I don't know what else to do. But yeah, when I was saying like, man, I just wish I could just be just the cinematographer on somebody's movie and I didn't have to do anything else. Like, or I'll be a cinematographer and editor because I like editing a lot. And I feel those two kind of go hand in hand together anyways. It feels like you might as well shoot it. And then you already know what all the scenes are already. When you go to edit it, you're halfway there.
You saying that though affirms my idea that you probably are a director, because you have a vision for something and you need to be through every step of the process in order to achieve that vision. I feel like I'm the same way. So you have to just learn all these, like, at least not different jobs and how to do them. You have to at least learn the terminology or how the artist you're going to be working with speaks in order to then accomplish that greater vision. And I feel like comic book creating is very much that way, and then filmmaking is very much that way, but so different, so drastically different. I would much rather describe a panel than describe like a visual effect that I see in my mind without any kind of like, oh, let me draw it or anything like that. So yeah, it's I actually think that my filmmaking might be stronger after I finally finish up this comic book, because of like learning how to better use the visual medium and like, tell stories through shots. So I can't wait to hop back into filmmaking after this. But yeah, also don't want it to be a year until One Sun issue 2 comes out.
Yeah, you don't want it to take too long where people forget about you and so on. But it is kind of true though. It's like, I think so many of those mediums cross back and forth, because I always felt when I started making comics, I was like, well, here's the thing. I haven't been drawing nearly as long as everybody else. but I
Mm,
have all this experience from filmmaking and acting and all this stuff that I know a lot of people who draw
right,
well don't have. So they don't know all these shots the same way, and they don't know how to set things up, and they don't know how to balance stories. So I felt like at least
right,
that was always in my corner. I at least had that kind of aspect, is like one of those ones like I'll learn the drawing
right.
along the way, but till then I have at least all
Uh,
the other things for setting up a story and putting it all together. So and that's amazing. I think so much of
well,
that stuff crosses over.
and once I feel like once you learn how to edit, whether it's photo editing or video editing, especially video editing to me though, like you just become a little bit of a magician. Like you're just
Mhm.
capable of that much more, and you can trick people in some way that we figured out. And yeah, I feel like once you're able to apply that, like obviously with filmmaking, you're watching it, so as an audience member, you're just stuck and you have to watch it. But comic books, for instance, like putting something on a page where and like having to think about it structurally, like I want the reader to flip the page and then on this one is like the big reveal and then on the right one it's not as important, but like just those small things. I didn't realize that comic book creators were having to pay attention to what page is going on the left and what is going on the right, and now I do. So I just feel like it's all a learning process. I'm still obviously learning and stuff like that, but that's definitely why I just consider myself a student of both mediums forever.
Yeah. I feel like you will always continuously learn. Like that never goes away. The second that anybody says that they think they know it all, then they definitely have a lot more to
Right.
learn. I feel.
Definitely, definitely. And I never want to be that guy. I actually think, I mean, I feel like you can learn from anything, whether it's a comic you hate or a movie you hate. Like there's still lessons to be learned from that. More so cautionary tale, but yeah, nonetheless.
Well, and it's too. I always say a lot of times too. You can have a movie that's not maybe a great movie, but it has that one scene in there that's actually pretty darn cool. The rest of the movie maybe not that
Right,
great, but that one scene stands out. And that's sometimes what I find in
right,
certain things is that like there'll be that little moment where it's like, oh, that's pretty hip right there, or there's something you don't see every day. A lot of times for me, like when it comes to movies, like I get excited when I see something. I'm like, well, I've never seen that before in anything else. Like even if the rest of the stuff,
right,
maybe it's not the greatest movie or maybe not the greatest story, but you go, that part right there, never seen anybody else do that. That's almost kind of cool in itself.
right, right. Don't even give create that credit. Like I'm sure nobody goes into anything wanting to make something bad, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's just it's really up to fate at that point because I I was I was pretty old when I realized that 99% of films are pretty bad. And like I would say 80 almost nah, it's much lower than that. Maybe 20% of films are low key unwatchable. And then there's that 1% that is you can't find any flaws in it. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Like the 100% critically acclaimed films and stuff that sure you could probably, depending on your personal taste, say I would have done this differently, but the general consensus is that they're perfect. That 99% of movies that are bad though have the best ideas in them or the more creative ideas in them. So it's just depending on what you want to watch that day. From
Well, yeah, and for me, as like I'm one of those ones. I think because I create stuff, I have a hard like. I feel like I always like to try to go into stuff being as positive as possible for the most part. I'm not saying that every once in a while there's gonna be something you just don't like, and
same,
that's okay. You know what I mean? Because I always feel like I think about like the process, the making of it, all that stuff. There's so much other elements that go in
mm-hmm.
there. And especially nowadays too, you see so many people. It's easy to be negative. You could talk about 3 hours about why you dislike a movie with a buddy, but try to talk for 3 hours about why you love a movie. That's really tough. A lot of times you'll get stumped in about 20 minutes.
Right.
Even if it's a really good movie, it's amazing how tough that is. And I felt like I wanted to make that sort of a challenge, is like, how can I talk good and what's the good parts of stuff? What are the cool things in there? You know what I mean? Forget about the rest of the stuff. Yeah. Everybody makes
Right.
mistakes and so on like that. Not everything can turn out well, but what is like still the takeaway stuff you can get from there and so on. And sometimes some movies too, they might not be done perfectly,
Right.
but they have a great concept. The concept is amazing. Well, there you go. Take that and run with it. You know what I mean? Hey,
Right.
it didn't work out in their
That's what I'm
story the
saying.
way
Like
that.
I feel like it's much more. Sorry, I'm just saying. Like I feel like it's much more interesting when we're getting a weird viewpoint than when you're trying to, I guess, generally please everybody, or when everybody agrees on something and there's no room for criticism. I feel like that's also just toxic. Like, what is this? We should be able to critique things without it necessarily make the film bad. And of course, bad and good is always going to be subjective. So I would much rather watch a movie where I feel like they had fun making it than a movie where
Mhm.
it's like you I don't know. I feel like this is Oscar baity in a way, or like, you're just going for that kind of the prestige of making a quote unquote good film, and you're not trying to entertain me at all, or show us anything new, or be creative in any sense. I feel like some movies are pretty flat that way, but in terms of what I personally prefer, it's I don't know. I'll watch anything personally.
Yeah, no, it's one of those ones like, like I can enjoy so many different things and, whatnot. And a lot of times it's the things that's like, yeah, a lot of times like those Oscar type movies are most of the movies I don't care a whole lot for. Some extra movie that, maybe did straight to DVD or something like that. That might be the one that I go, dude, this one's the serious stuff right here. It's never going to
Right.
get recognition, but
Right.
man, is it cool, you know?
I mean, I feel like we can both agree too that a lot of trailers do not do the films a service, especially when we get into Oscar baity season,
Mhm.
because a lot of those trailers just end up feeling the same or cut the same, and you can almost tell what is going to happen in the film. Lately, we've been getting some surprises, thankfully, but it's yeah, you can normally tell. You can normally tell from me from the marketing. Um, I'm gonna give you a really good example. I don't know if you've seen it, but Black Adam, I feel like you could tell what that movie was going to be like from the marketing. And
Mhm.
studios aren't necessarily even trying to hide anymore. It's just, yeah, it is what it is. Here's the new Rock movie.
Yeah. It's like, that's like sort of when some movies like they'll like give away all three acts inside their movie. Like the Flash had that issue, and Batman v Superman was like
Yeah,
that was a bad year because I remember like I like Batman v Superman. I'm not saying that's bad, but the
me too.
trailers though, that because the other one that was really bad was Terminator 5. They gave away that
Right.
John Connor was going to turn to a villain in the trailer. No, you save that for the movie. Like, don't say that in the
You don't put
trailer.
Doomsday in the trailer. You don't put
Yeah,
Gwen's life in there in the trailer. What are you, stupid? Like, come on. At least, like, I definitely feel the same way. Tease the first two acts. Give us the first act, but tease the second act. Everything past, Joseph Campbell's lowest point, everything past that, do not put it in the trailer because I'm going to get to the end. Like, I remember Batman versus Superman and discourse around that being more so, is he gonna die? Not gonna die. As I feel like the discourse should have been Batman gonna win or is Superman gonna win? And it's because they gave up Doomsday in the fucking Comic Con trailer, dude. Like, come on,
yeah.
guys.
That's the thing is like the best thing you could. It's like you don't Batman versus Superman. Don't even just say that. People are going to show up. They don't need to see any of that
Right.
movie. Save that movie. It sells itself. It's not like you got some weird indie movie that you need to kind of get people like engaged to get them in there. It's like no, you got
Right.
something big. But yeah. I don't know. Sometimes like certain trailers, it's just like, dude, what are you guys doing? Like. Like make it a mystery or like that's why I
Right.
love like old trailers. You watch like trailers from like the 50s and the 60s. I was don't even know like I just watched this movie. I watched the trailer and I don't know what the heck's going on in it because they're just like they literally just like hard cut scenes together. But I like that though. I think that's the way to go. Like make it sort of
And if
weird and confusing.
they're either going for a tone express the like watch it, I guess, opposed to here, let's tell everybody into the film. And yeah, everybody's guilty of that. I feel like across Hollywood, but some of the worst ones, in my opinion, come from Sony. Um,
Whole Sony.
enough, yeah, and oh, what was that? What was that other franchise that they started? I think it was Universal that they tried to do the Monster franchise.
See, and I liked where they're going. I was like, okay, cool. I like the Tom Cruise mummy. It was good enough. I was like, I want to see where this goes. I bet you it's going to lead somewhere cool. No, they gave up on that because Dracula Untold was cool too.
Right, right. Like not, yeah, I actually agree that that one was to me it was way more interesting than what's it called? There's another Dracula thing that I had seen that was super boring, but I'm kind of a fan of Dracula, so I'll check out anything Dracula related, but I feel like next one BBC Dracula.
BBC,
Hello?
BBC
Yeah,
Dracula.
BBC had made like a Dracula series and it was pretty freaking good. I think it's on Netflix right now actually.
Was that the one that was done in
Look
like
it up.
4 episodes or something like that?
Yeah, I think so. It was, yeah, it was pretty short. But the guy that played Dracula on that, I don't know why I like as a character, but yeah, I will always check him out.
Yeah, no, I dig all kinds of things Dracula. Anyways, I'm a big Castlevania fan. I love Van Helsing a lot, that movie as well, and any of the old Dracula movies as well
Yes,
too.
yes. Dracula or Van Helsing was one of my favorites growing up too. Like that and the first Ghost Rider would be my Halloween double feature every year.
Nice. Yeah, no, I love Van Helsing. I don't care. Like people, like they always say, like, "Oh, that movie's kind of dumb," and like it's like, dude, I think that movie's amazing. It's like it literally is like a Castlevania movie that combined all the cool, like Universal monsters together in one
Right,
film.
right,
Like it's action packed. It's got like 007 vibes in it as well too. Like it was like everything I could want in a
right.
movie. I just wish there was more of them. That's
And
just it was too cool.
same and like what he turns into the werewolf is just
Uh huh.
come on. It's like the dopest transition ever because he's tearing his skin off and stuff. Come on, they haven't done anything like that since.
No, and I remember the people too, like they're like the CG doesn't look like. I'm like, dude, at that time period, no CG really looked that great. Is my action. I don't think it looks
Right.
bad in that one, but like that was just the era where like
No.
I mean, you still could kind of tell this day and age. You're like, oh, that's CG, that's not CG, you know?
Right. There's some like I'll say like the hide thing at the beginning. There's some moments that look fake, but I actually think a lot of the stuff they do with Dracula and his brides in that
Mhm.
movie are still terrifying and they really hold up. Like some of his transitions, like one form are just really, really good.
Yeah, no, there's just so much cool stuff in that movie, and it's just fun. Like it's just a good story, good like ride, great characters. Yeah, it's like I don't know. It's just it's weird what some people like, you know, almost go like, oh, we don't like this, but we like this thing over here, and you're like, okay, sure.
Yeah. Like maybe we should look at the whole experience as a whole. I mean, personally, I'm not a fan of the people who really do things like I don't know, like Metacritic, Rotten Tomatoes to judge if they're going to enjoy it. It's like sometimes you can the theater, the movie has 30% on Rotten Tomatoes, but you just have the best time ever because you knew nothing about it and it struck all the right chords. Like I'd much rather I kind of miss not being super high where honestly like Instagram will shit in your face because everybody's reposting about it or that's how they used to promote. I don't know if you remember this, but do you remember when the Justice League cut of Justice League came out?
The Justice
Like the
League.
original 2017. That's what some people call it, like the Joss Whedon cut of Justice League. So
Yeah,
when
and
that
it's
came
supposed
out, this was
I like that
this was the
version
first
too.
time. This is the first time I'd ever seen the site do this, though. they were promoting the day before the movie came out. Rotten Tomatoes themselves were like, "What is the score gonna be?" And I don't know if you remember, but there was this big thing, like where the fandoms between Marvel and DC were Rotten Tomato scores from Marvel films to DC films, and so they like, yeah, they promoted what will Justice League's Rotten Tomatoes score be. Unfortunately, it was rotten for that cut of the film. But it was like, to me, it was a little bit of like a culture shift, because now I really started to see um, people using Rotten Tomato scores to like promote their films, especially like the actual marketing teams of different movies. Just something I find interesting. Like, do a lot of people even know how we arrive if a movie is rotten or fresh? Because I didn't know until recently. Literally, it's not as simple as it sounds. Like the scores are not tallied up and then averaged out. It's more like how many people voted it rotten versus how many people voted it fresh, and then averaged out. So you're not getting an accurate score for that film, if that makes sense. But right, like just those weird things that I think, it's almost called tribalism amongst nerds. Like we just hate each other for like, your movie sucks and our movie is better. Boycott the Flash. Like, that's just how we are, I guess.
Silly stuff like that. It's like Rotten Tomatoes one of those ones. I don't even like Rotten Tomatoes because in the term itself, it's already negative. Rotten Tomatoes is, if that's your title, is already telling me that you have a negative connotation on what you're looking at. And as I said,
Right.
like it sounds weird, but it's like, you know what? I want to go into everything with this positive kind of vibe. Like if negativity is what you're using to promote stuff, it's like, nah, I'm sorry. It's like you obviously are going into it with like a bad mindset, and of course things are going to come out worse if you think that way, So yeah, mostly it's like critics and all that stuff. As I said, I know like I talk movies, and I guess by that standard, you're kind of rating them and so on. But it's like a lot of times I'm very iffy about critics. I'd rather hear from the people. That's how I've always felt. Like, you know what I mean? Like you ask a couple people on the street about a movie, that mostly will give you a much better like observation of what a film is than somebody who's a so-called critic who, let's be honest, has also never even worked on a movie or anything like that. There's all those kind of factors that go in there.
You say that. Right. Yeah, exactly. And I feel like they don't even I don't know. I feel like a lot of critics are not vetted, so some of them go into it with their own whatever agenda it is, whether it's review bombing. We see a lot of that too in the modern day, or just not, if they don't like the director, they don't like the actors in it or something, you may see them come up with a negative score, which is like, first of all, if I could ever be a critic and that could be my job, I would definitely want to do that, because it has to be super fun to get paid to just like express your opinion. I'm sure it's an awesome job, but at the same time, how are we paying these people? Like, why is it a job at the end of the day? It feels almost like it you can run into like gatekeeping at a certain extent, because then certain things are not allowed to be judged because they're not. So it's just weird, and I think it does create this unneeded rivalry between people when they're constantly being compared by other people within their same medium, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, exactly. Well, it's like that one that,
whether they're creatives or,
and you could just go to like the Amazon.com and look at like the reviews right there of the user reviews. And that most of the times will give you a better like idea about stuff anyways. Cause you're like, here's like, even if you just read about 6 reviews, you're like, okay, that tells me all I need to sort of know about a movie. And you're kind of getting people that like legitimately enjoy it. Yeah. You'll get some people that, aren't making any sense whatsoever. But for the most part, I feel like here's the fans right here, of anything.
Right. Right. But I also think it's interesting, almost to like study these things, or my way of kind of studying it is like what's popular now, and then what happens in the pop culture timeline that makes that trend not popular anymore. Right now, I really like multiverse. We're multiverse thing, and then like everybody is kind of get their hand at that, but how far does that go until that subgenre breaks? And we see trends like that throughout, whether it's action films or horror. Just watching out for those things. I think it's really interesting. And then as a creative, right, I try to use that as a gauge on, okay, if I were to do a multiverse movie, say, what would people like and what would people not like? But then still at the end of the day, all art is super experimental. We're just figure this out. So you never really know what ideas are going to work and what's not. But personally, that's just like why I pay attention to movie trends or storytelling trends in any sort of way. It's just like, there's a reason why people like this, right? But why? And maybe do I have anything to add on top, or anything to say about that?
Yeah, exactly. It's always, more of anything, it's always interesting to look at that kind of stuff and see where it sort of takes you and all that good stuff there. And, whether you use it or don't use it, it does give you at least an idea of different paths and different journeys you can kind of take in your own stories.
Mm-hmm. What have people done and what have people not done? I think it's just, it all, like we were talking about at the beginning, it helps feed that creative mindset that we're trying to honestly like upkeep. Like I feel like we're always in work mode, but how often do I have the ideas to actually put pen to paper or finish that outline or whatever it is?
Yeah, there's so much of that stuff. But well, Blaze, I think it's about time we kind of start wrapping up. It's getting a little bit late here, and well, not that late, but just a little bit and so on. But One Son, as it's coming out, where can everybody find all your good information when they want to check that book out, when they want to, get a hold of like the preview copy and all that good stuff?
Sure. Well, so right now I am thinking of selling like that little art book that you had showed earlier. I'm going to have the last copies that we have as part of a Kickstarter reward to hit a certain tier in order to get the last of those. I have 20 available of that blue cover, and then everything after that is going to be printed with the secondary printing. So the one that you have right now, Scott, is 1 out of 50, and that is all. And then after that, they're going to be a little bit different from there. So keep on the lookout for our Kickstarter that should be launching later on in the year. Once we finish up the art for our first issue, we're just going to be doing a Kickstarter as a way for people to pre-order our first issue, and all the funds that we make from that Kickstarter, as well as getting the art started on our second issue. So we're trying to be very economical and not run a bunch of Kickstarters in 1 year. We don't want to have to keep asking people to keep hitting those goals and whatnot. And, just be smart about the things that we're asking for. So you can go ahead and follow us at One Son Con, and myself at Hokoa Apashi. But yeah, other than that, man, I just want to say thank you for having me on. This was my first podcast, so I want to apologize if I was, jittery or a little awkward at times. But yeah, man, I really appreciate it, and I will be finishing up my Pizza Boyz issues as soon as possible. I actually just got back from Diego, so yeah, gonna hop on that as soon as possible.
Well, cool, Blaze. Well, yeah, nothing but good times, having fun. Podcasting it's always a good way just to really kind of get into an in-depth conversation, talk about all the things, whether you're into and all the creative stuff that equals out for itself. And yeah, as I said, we will have to do this again later down the line, and we can always talk more comics, more movies, all that stuff. That's several things I really enjoy, so I'm always down for that.
Sure. Sounds good, man. Thank you.
But yeah, till then, you can always go to oldmanorange.com where you'll find Pizza Boyz comics, Old Man Orange podcast, and via VHS, old animations, videos, all that fun stuff. Till then, I'm Spencer Scott Holmes with special guest
Blaze Homokoa. Chee!
And we'll see you some other time.
Thank you, man. Have a good one.
Tell no lie.